Are you okay if my debate partner watches?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's fine.
Guess we're just waiting on a judge.
That's fine.
Hello.
Howdy, y'all. Do we got a speech drop up and going?
Yeah, I just created one. I'm ready when everyone else is.
Questions, comments,
Let me get to
concerns?
Let me get to the speech drop, sorry.
Do you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or clarifications?
I don't think so. Are you okay with me going, spreading as fast as possible on the 1AC?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I mean, I think, speed is a question of inclusion, so I guess that would probably be dependent on your opponent, not necessarily me.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm operating on a Chromebook, so my, I just have to actually type in the room code rather than just click the link. So, and it occasionally lags, so I apologize for the delay. But
No problem.
here we go. We should be going there. The Hornet Cup round 2, 1AC. Awesome.
Are you okay with speed on the 1AC? Since it's all the speech talks.
I can. Is it okay? Would you mind if I just cleared you? Would that be all right?
Yeah. For clear for clarity or clear for speed?
Clear for speed. I probably won't use it because I have your stuff in front of me, but yeah.
Sure. Just can you call slow for speed and clear for clarity?
Okay, I can do that. Thank you.
I imagine it won't be an issue till the 1 hour.
And I just pulled this up. Thank you. You're ready to begin. Whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm good to go.
Framing for all the judges to evaluate the round through the lens of the eternal recurrence. The eternal recurrence is thought experiment where your life will play it again and again without variation. They have to ask how we should live. And debate is an eternal recurrence. Debaters read the same arguments off text. TA's generic is without finding a successful solution. And the eternal recurrence is real. We're constantly reincarnated. All material gains are terminally non-unique. We're reborn into new circumstances studied by Professor Tucker. Reviewed over 2,500 cases, finding reincarnation was the only explanation for children's recollection of past lives. Lines 13. Rain began waking up, clutching his chest. She drew his art exploded. I think he used to be someone else. He remembered us in Hollywood many miles. from Oklahoma, Ryan stopped still taken from the 30 moon pictured. I pointed that Georgia, then we did a picture of the rides, claims now you knew we come on 2,500 kids, fellows of children, talker, professor, UVA, missing claims, made by children who say they better translate the children provide enough detail about life choice to an actual person, rarely unknown to the family who died. The most logical scientific explanation of a child, regards of memories from the like area over. A memory speaks the person quantum mechanics provides clues to. Pre-conditions exist against our physical world, made of consciousness, and the universe is infinite, possible too. Current universe data suggests that flat universe especially infinite after 40 times contains an infinite galaxy, our universe, one in an infinite multiverse, and the infinite world means that contains an infinite values. One's actions cannot change the world. The only thing one can do is change their ontological orientation. Posture mate. Infinite world contains infinite positive and negative value. We can only change to finite, remember good and better, yet adding or subtracting better qualities and changing infinite quality of act, and for the same effect of the total good and bad none. And current superstructure says separate theory and practice, create illusion of objective good versus evil, subverting our ontology, skewing our evaluation of morality and policy. We don't really begin beyond good and evil. The moral character of an object can exist objectively, e.g. poison is intrinsically good, bad, only relation experience with it. Need to do so morality and policy effects is inherently flawed. This morality and truth is co-opted by structures of power to control individual co-op agency. Clue 19. Separation between theory and practice should be left prevented. Theory between adequate and inadequate days. Pursuing adequate days, we make ourselves say to change practice. Theory should be totally different understanding plays out. Different practice should have causation of those we only perceive. Affects everything depends on the adequate ideas. Morality, which means these objects themselves could be divided into good and evil. We still need a single action, not a moral experimentation without defining to be structured. The future must be randomly open. Politics about is giving essentially structures and ideas don't have. A conclusion or deal is ongoing. Conversations that is certain practice there is not. Exclusive draw tolerance towards practices is anarchistic. Fetishization of consensus good and bad. There are no difference between they state, religion, morality, or any other form of common consensus by freeing ourselves from moral and rational authority as we free ourselves from the day entity is becoming through encounters. There's no distinction between in and out rounds. Starting a timer changes nothing. The same systems of oppression still occur and attempt to control the world and make conditions for fair execution numbly fail recreates results of it. Conclusion 19. Politics is active experimentation, non-mere game isolated from their project. This is already established, trying to capture general activity within the numbers remain not changed. It's not enough to occupy position, but remain settled to driven better will overcome traditional revolutionary opportunities today. And to better reforms, governor powerful and inadequate ideas reproduce the we should not follow actors who think that theory thought just better and theory is irrelevant. Apex. Resulted by nature of the self and world body, but politics and inability to make us happy. A person is torn between touch of their desire to live life and their inability. So this is the root of violence causing breathing endless, escape flashing. How it is, we can't control the directions of the media of causing endless harm and resulting in value, destroying violating causing more genocide violence. Split away. Resulted by caused by wound people to problems reacting control the current flux. Conflicts fed by resulted by conflict in the Middle East and the effects of the conflicts today in African countries and people that influence enduring and must be taken for the past. And fear-centric policies, absolute order, narratives, practice, average, and premise on affinity, control, destroys, political engagement, makes ego-destruction, warfare, fear of immigrants, and evil. Lacey 14. We are surrounded by the propaganda and animals, progress, and purposes of attacking capital, overcome the problems that apply to the human conditions. Progress is a control, all life designed to manage the growing numbers of the living that fear of otherness and difference. You just destroying the exhibiting immigrants, causing the economic wars and societal accelerating ego degradation. Politics becomes the attempt to realize that fast because I consumer life settled during the war of security results in wars that have become experimental jobs for new tech decided to get control freedom and progress in the world illusion that master control inequality created by the system. That's our advocacy. In result, the United States federal government should implement immigration reform that removes substantial statutory restrictions on legal immigration in the United States. We affirm the resolution as a matter of full sexual don't accept the narrative surrounding the topic, but also don't make any prediction or interpretation of intervention. And you still have access to your G's and one that you just need to win the ontological justification of what there was additional context to obviously so by the fairness and education through no risk of those with their have and are just role. Embrace the resolution without controlling and predicting the outcome, but true endorsement of the judgment does include multiple throws being other activists can invite one is an embracing fate until lose 86. We never lived in a life that then fades. I believe fix the case of the firms of becoming and being of becoming is a matter of single the rule which are that affirmations necessities for exactly since the being is affirmative becoming in unity. Affirming multiple inflated and unknown other from chance from the other friendships as units as suppressors multiplicity necessities as suppressor of personal diet. Chance I have a bullshit difference in every chain of the night on the day. Happiness in all things they prefer the chance of the feet of chance the city is that never evolution for other combinations and necessities of affirm chance itself to know how to affirm chance not to believe we do not know how to play the battle because the several that make makes use of just facilitating property to produce companies diseases or they policy companies intelligence and to be obtained the just because it's not affirmed enough in one pro. Affirming the dice roll triggers active analysis, which is different from passive knowledge of this world. Active knowledge one understood no greater meaning allows everyone to find their meaning in morality just to preclude action rather an orientation towards the world and how we take action. We realize the only thing we control is our orientation. 3 is going to be rupture traditional norm morality based on contradiction of rationality along with the see beyond good and evil. Passive knowledge of one allows morality meanings and finds the superstructure causing result of unto makes us hate us ourselves if we fail. That's right. Our values are not have the power to we blame the value non-living objects because we then become active and reject the values of given our values the best of knowledge continue to believe in traditional values despite the active knowledge is ready to create find more something worth believe the best of knowledge doesn't want to receive self to believe the traditions of self produces any more teachers just the same way mice and allowed to be rational we live to be governance without the foundation of morality leads active knowledge to reject morality action shows in practical terms cut.
Just to be clear on your speed, you end up getting through the last card.
Yeah, I didn't get to the last 4 words, but it doesn't make a difference. 4 or 5.
Yeah, those are negatives. But yeah, last card. Okay, just want to make sure that I was reading accurately. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm ready to start cross-X whenever you are.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So here we go. I guess time starting now. So first, I don't know. I kind of want to like propose to you. So marriage after this, but anyhow, moving beyond that. Moving beyond that. Can you explain to me like active nihilism just a little bit more? I know that you kind of talked about like how it affirms our sense of self, but could you just clarify that a little bit more?
Sure. Active nihilism is essentially an ontological orientation towards the world that has individuals create their own morality and sort of truths and perspectives and meaning in the world. They realize there's no greater meaning. We're just screaming into the void. So the only thing we can do is affirm our own ontological orientation. They do not let the superstructure code down morality and the notions of good versus evil. They look at things in practical terms, relationally, don't see intrinsic good and evil, but rather beyond good and evil. They take action. When they take action, obviously, because there's no greater meaning in the world, and they realize they can only control themselves. If they fail, they don't hate themselves. That triggers resentment. They just keep moving forward and break down more structures and morality to push forward. This would be opposed to passive nihilist, which is currently the nihilism of the status quo, which seems like, yeah, we can't do anything. And they continue to feed into the superstructure, feed into these ideas of good and evil, feed into and hate themselves when they fail, which they inevitably do because you cannot succeed. It triggers resentment, exacerbating supercharges resentment.
Awesome. Like that's actually really awesome. So I guess like, do you think that this is something that like everyone can achieve, or like if we just like put our minds to it and realize that this is something that we can achieve, like everyone can? I
think the notion that the predictions of other people cannot achieve it. I cannot, obviously, that would go against the very notion of the sort of criticism, the affirmative-based ontological orientation. We would argue we can't predict what other people do, but we would argue this is a good heuristic in order to mitigate resentment.
Okay, that's actually kind of cool. Let's see here. So yeah, and so like obviously the passive nihilism kind of just leads to self-destruction, right? Like that's kind of what we don't like about passive nihilism.
Nihilism has caused massive amounts of resentment and all the geocentric politics that allow the superstructure to control things that causes war, fear of the other, genocide, bad stuff.
All right, I like this, and that's the end of cross-X. Thank you so much. I'm gonna take. I guess I'm gonna start my 4 minutes of prep time, but I'm probably gonna take around 2 minutes. But we can just start.
Sure.
Oh, okay. There's 2:20 on the clock. Let me just download this, and then we can upload it to the speech doc. Sorry, I gotta kind of apologize for tech. Like, I don't know, just I have to
I've been muted this whole time. I just realized. No, it's all good.
Okay.
It's all good. No worries. Cannot control technology.
Yeah, I wish I could.
I got it.
Okay, there we go. Awesome, you got it. Yeah, so I'm going to be speaking a lot slower, but I think we're just going to. I think our order is just going to be kind of. We're just going to go framework first, and then. Yeah, actually, we'll go framework, and then just basic disad, and then think of it. It's I guess framework, and then we got off. Anyhow, so without further ado, if I just pull up the document, actually, we can begin at for 7 minutes. Okay. Okay, so first I'd like to go over framework. So the role of the judge to evaluate the round through the lens of eternal recurrence. I actually completely agree, but I think our opponent kind of doesn't really fully ideate like what this means. Is that eternal recurrence means that we have to look at this again and again without variation. Look at the same debate again and again and again, which means, Judge, that if we're looking this through the rounds of the debate, the things that this means that we need to basically look at this debate to any audience, and even to the same audience. We need to look at it and basically say, like, are we willing to live with this ontological orientation for the rest of our lives, and what consequences does that bring within ourselves? So, because I just like to basically agree with this framework, and I think it's actually really useful, a way to think about this debate, because it's all about ontological perspectives. Just keeping that in mind is that we need to be able to look at this debate to the audience that we have here today. We have one audience member, and so not only should we think about this debate in the context of obviously ourselves, which is what we can control, but also just eternal recurrence of this debate and the eternal suffering of the audience member that we have here today. So now this leads us into the actual file. So debate as a sermon. It's an informative argument given to motivate action, often with much emotion, charisma, and gravitas. Unfortunately, apps the discourse producing the wrong type of sermon. These the apps plan emphasize the emotional terrorism debate because it explodes ontological words. We are looking into hell and embracing it. It's an existential mode filled with nothingness and a void where we create our own morality. There is nothing left for us to create but two men arguing back and forth about what ontological orientation we should create. That is the eternal recurrence that we live in. And so the affirmative is quite simply looking into purgatory at best, Judge. Is that what we were talking about? Is that we should reject this passive nihilism and embrace a purgatory where we just basically say that nothing matters because everything's going to be relatively the same. And really, what are the impacts? Well, first, is this type of emphasis on the existential impending death of ourselves and our values leads to psychological effect on the terror management. So, Bailey Freedom Walker, 2020, the terror of absolute annihilation creates such a profound, albeit subconscious anxiety in people that they spend their lives attempting to make sense of it. On large-scale societies build symbols, laws, religious meanings, cultures, and belief systems explain the significance of life, define what makes certain characteristics, skills, and talents extraordinary, and punish or kill others who do not hear their cultural worldview. Terror management leads to increased violence against outgroups. Now, outgroups in this case is literally our only one outsider, but I'd like to point out that he is an outsider because he is the one person not taking part in this debate. Us two are obviously two ontological observers who are debating this. You are, of course, a judge, but then our one outsider, our one audience member, he is an outgroup to all three of us who are partaking in our own society. And what this does is this often political or cultural minorities dehumanize and targeting others in campaigns of violence. 2008. Increased support for in-group along with aggressive policies against threatening outbursts of with consistent effects on responses to reminders of mortality, reminders of death. Increased American support for the use of extreme military to capture or kill. Among Iranians, reminders of death. Increased support for martyrdom missions to kill Americans. Whereas under neutral conditions, Iranians give more positive evaluations to students to promote peaceful coexistence. Similarly, Israelis view violent counterterrorism measures more justified when reminded of death. These studies show that in the face of elevated concerns about dead people are more prone to dehumanize and vilifying, supporting the killing, worldview threatening others. Politically, feel that they stand on moral high ground and actively proselytize their worldviews while defending their death-denying ideologies against competing belief systems. Zealots on each side hold an apocalyptic vision which the elimination of the other will benefit humankind while demonstrating the superior of their own worldview. And so framing, actually, I would actually just cut this out. We're really talking about eternal recurrence, Judge, and us doing this debate over and over and over again, how we exactly live with ourselves and our ontological orientation. And actually, this is where I'd like to extend to a little bit analytics on my impacts here, is that if we just repeat the same debate over and over and over again, we are two different worldviews opposed. That is how this debate has already been established and set up. And so therefore, us arguing about this and creating like an ontological like void that we need to fill, which will often lead to terror management theory, leads us to then try to commit violence against ourselves and violence against the out group, aka the audience member. And that is ultimately pain and destruction, because then we like launch ourselves at each other, we annoy each other, we engage in all sorts of bad things that just ultimately cause us pain. And ultimately, since even if it's going to occur over and over again, doesn't matter. We should still try to avoid pain and avoid the suffering of ourselves, which if we embrace that ontological worldview, is going to happen. So anyhow, what's the alternative? Look up to heaven. Vote against the affirmative violent and dehumanizing sermon. And however, us just listening to the drawbacks of this type of discourse has like no business being enough to win a debate, because we're already kind of in this ontological hellscape. Instead, that's how terror management responds. We need to give a positive benefit. We need to give an alternative benefit to voting for us. So instead of being motivated by the opposite of their claims of like hellfire and purgatory, vote for the positive existence of heaven by engaging in the positives. Affirm the existence of heaven through the comfort of having a place and joining others in love. Pope Francis 2020, in his reflection, the Pope focused on John 14, in which Jesus addresses his disciples by saying, "Do not let your hearts be troubled in the dramas of life." He explained that Jesus offers two remedies for our turmoil. The first is an invitation to us to have faith. He knows that in life, the worst anxiety comes from feeling of not being able to cope, from feeling alone. And so instead, this anxiety, in which is difficulty added to difficulty, cannot be overcome alone. That's why Jesus asks us not to lean on ourselves, but on him. Because liberation from anguish passes through trust. Jesus' second remedy is expressed in his words, "In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. I'm going to prepare a place for you." This is what Jesus did for us. He reserved us a place in heaven. It's even more beautiful to think that this forever will be all in joy and full communion with others. And to ascend to heaven is to have a living relationship in love. So what's exactly the alternative solution here? Is that through positive discourse, we prevent TMT and give net positive vote for through symbolic immortality, leaking 19. Human traditional hero systems are no longer convincing. Beck didn't ever believe that science itself is falling. You guys, people need new convincing illusions that enable them to feel, in the grand scheme of things, a form of symbolic immortality. Zelensky, 2008, more recent studies conducted in the United States and around explicitly tested the effects of priming religious values of compassion, exposure to compassionate teachings of Jesus, e.g. love your neighbors yourself, led fundamentalists significantly decrease their support for violent solutions. And combining these values with MS led fundamentalists to drop their support for violence to level equivalent to that of less fundamentalist Christians. Similar results were found in a sample of Shiite Muslims in Iran, where death reminders led us to more aggressive anti-Western attitudes, except in compassion. Do goodness to others because Allah loves those who do good. With crime, presentation of compassionate verse from the Quran redirected the response to MS such that it led to reduce hostility against the United States and its allies relative participants not exposed. Studies show that to motivate differing faiths to embrace compassionate teachings and reduce support for violence when these values are linked to an authoritative source. Ultimately, vote negative for the message of positive love in the face of negative fear. Because again, Judge, we're in an eternal recurrence. And also, like all the extensions, those are just there on accident. I apologize again. But we're an eternal recurrence. And while it's cool to kind of throw everything away and kind of create our own reality, that does lead to a far remaining terror. And so instead, Judge, I think the opposite is that, A, we should embrace love and compassion, so that way we don't feel the need to be violent or disrupting to ourselves, like to the other people in the space. But also so that we can look up to something positive as just a value, because honestly, thinking of heaven is far more fun than thinking of an eternal recurrence with no ontological meaning. Thank you.
Okay, 3 minutes starting now. What's the status of the alt?
It's unconditional.
Unconditional, okay.
Yeah, it happens no matter what, because we do need to kind of embrace compassion, I feel like.
What's heaven?
What's heaven? It is a place where we all join ourselves in love, and it is of infinite beauty and grandeur because we're not alone. And if you kind of have any questions, like I think
So you're trying to say it's like a good place we should all go to?
Yeah, it's a good place that provides us comfort of having a place and joining others in love.
Sure.
You can just look at my tagline, but also
Who does your alt?
My alt is that we should embrace the ontological perspective of heaven.
Okay.
And the discourse of heaven.
On the link, how exactly do we emphasize the quote-unquote emotional terrorism of debate?
Because we can't emotionally cope with an ontological nothingness, and kind of this idea that there are two violent sides and ideologies, and that's kind of what this debate has become. And we're trying to trap in this eternal recurrence of violence. And so I think the only way forward is to lead with compassion. And I think that that's kind of how emotional terrorism and this existential void creates terror in us.
So in the heaven, does everyone embrace their own heaven? Is it a universal heaven everyone goes to? Like, if my heaven's different than your heaven, are our heavens compatible, or is it like one good heaven?
Well, it's basically one good heaven that we all join in love. That's what the vision we should imagine.
Okay.
But I'd also like to point to that it doesn't necessarily mean that heaven has to exist. We just need to believe it exists. Because through that, we create positive, compassionate discourse that kind of resolves all the internal terror that we feel and the violence we create against ourselves.
Okay, and to clarify, you concede the framing, we should view debate as an eternal occurrence.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the only good way to kind of battle ontological perspectives, is that we have to live with the consequences again and again and again.
Why vote neg?
Simply because if you vote AF and affirm the ontological coin flip, you keep the emotional terrorism of that, and you end up with this,
So the reason is our
again, versus instead we believe that when we die and when this round ends, we go to heaven and experience good things. And I think that it's much better to know for a fact that you're going to experience good things after this. I think that's the best way to deal with life, rather than to create your own morality.
So the reason you cannot vote AF is our advocacy.
No, the reason you cannot vote AF is because of your ontological impacts and how the terror that you create within our own hearts.
Okay. It's going to be 30 seconds probably of prep time. Start. Okay. I think I used 20. Did you get the 1AR, Doc?
Sorry, no, actually, let me. Oh, there you go, 1AR. Okay.
It's going to be a lot of analytics, probably. There's not a lot of stuff on the doc, just some extensions.
All right, awesome.
So I will get to the app. All right. Uh, 6 minutes. Starting now. Extend the role of judges to evaluate the round through the lens of the eternal occurrence. Your life plays out again and again without variation. 1. Debate is an eternal occurrence with the same arguments debates over and over. This is terminal. The implication is that this is terminal defense to every single one of their impacts. As we have the same debate over and over, the same debate will just can have the same ontological positions. You cannot resolve them. This has a few implications. 1. It means you vote out on presumption for a few reasons. First, to affirm means to deny the falsehood of. Second, they have taken on an unconditional advocacy. That means they have taken on an affirmative burden and the burden of proof, which means if neither one of us solves the non-unique offense, it means you vote out on presumption. 2. The eternal recurrence is true at large. We're reincarnated. This means A, we can never change the world, only our orientation towards it. B, all impacts is terminally non-unique. Here we go. C, as it means results upon is an infinite impact, as it's always happening, leading to endless pain and suffering. Then violence outweighs all of your impacts of magnitude and probability. Since it always happening, you have not made any claims to resolve results upon, and the fact that we're reincarnated means that this is an infinite impact leading to endless violence, which means it outweighs all of your alternatives. Second, the universe is infinite. There are infinite multiverses, which means we cannot control any of your sort of impacts or make changes in the first place, which means you do not resolve your impacts. There are nether worlds where sort of everyone embraces hell, and another one way where they do not, where there is no ability to embrace heaven or hell, which terminally non-unique all of your impacts. This means 1, you should embrace fate, but 2, it it also means that worse, you vote on presumption. Extend across, we solve results on the biggest impact of the round, the root cause of violence, solving ego, destruction, war, immigration fears, and by breaking down the push to change by not trying to replace foreign great for greater meaning or change the unchangeable, instead focusing internally. This breaks down the coding of results upon an objective morality that allows the superstructure to co-opt our agency and determine truth, which skews our evaluation. Means we are a prior question to impact calculus and political engagements. You presume all of the one and sees truth claims false because they're coded by questions of morality, good versus evil. Literally, they talk about conceptions of heaven being good and conceptions of hell being bad. This is the sort of we cannot being is beyond good and evil. We've embraced fate and the resolution of the spirit of active knowledge. We don't hate ourselves if we fail. They're good and evil notions trigger results upon. That's all our Kaluza cards, which means our alpha is a giant disad towards the alternative. Go to the alternative. Perm do both. One is going to be the net benefit. First, the double bonds. Violence is as all encompassing, as you say, and everyone is coded by this question of terror within the round. We cannot change it itself, as you say, and it's happening right now. It's a double bind. Neither the alternative can overcome the exception of the app, in which case the perm shields the links, or it can, which means it can never solve, since it can't overcome the exception. It means it's try or die for the app. Text is second is going to be active nihilism. The negative is a form of overt. It says the questions of heaven and hell and the questions of morality controls sort of all conceptions of, and the ontological terror of debate controls conceptions of violence, which leads to internal suffering and hatred. The fact that we cannot control the universe, we cannot control whether individuals embrace heaven or hell, we cannot control whether heaven or hell exists, we cannot control sort of good and evil. The app is key to reclaiming subjectivity and reframing the road. Maybe you're right that these sort of questions of debates are inevitable, but the way we can orient itself is not. 3 is going to be objective, nor the alt catch-all solution to violence is a position of objective morality causes an endless constraint where we construct arbitrary things that must be solved. If we don't, there's no value to life. The app is key to detaching the moral constraint to resolve the infinite violence of the alt and resolve results upon. 4 is subject formation is key. The idea of solving the violence relies on a notion of being first. Our uniqueness claims that subjectivity is marked by internal hatred and results upon. So the app is key to escaping the endless totality of the harms you isolated. 5 is going to be literally they paint a picture of the alt being sort of an ontological terror, and they have to embrace love, embrace faith. That is literally the thesis of our affirmative, which is Amar Fati, which is the embracing of faith, the embracing of love, creating our own morality. The alt is probably, at worst case, the affirmative, which means we resolve it, and they're probably not competitive in the first place. If it is not, it triggers all the impacts of results upon. Alt. Perm to the alt. First, it's going to be assemblage building. You should allow people to sign on to your methodology, especially if violence is as structural as you say. We're all codified. Otherwise, you exclude others. If you can't sign on and it's a terminal solvency deficit, the alt, there's no movement to preserve the knowledge production of the app. Alt would have forgotten. First of all, you have not all additionally read representations or binding, which means we should probably embrace heaven overall. 2 is going to be we are sort of embracing heaven. We have an internal subjectivity of how we embrace heaven overall. 2 is going to be, we will also extend across the deluge card, and the alt is the definition of resolving the dice. Again, that's the one last thing to include, one less impact to solve, but this recreates the impacts of results upon in the first place. And it also means they don't solve the app because they're trying to improve upon it. Also means they don't solve their advocacy, recreate results upon. Let's go back to some of the other stuff. First, going to be, they say link. We propose the sort of ontological terror of the USFG. 1 is to be, we don't defend or endorse the USFG. Our resolution is sort of metaphorical embracement of the dice roll. 2 is going to be the positive debate is a sort of focus on sort of emotion and gravitas within it. Posits like we can control other individuals in the first place. 3 is going to be your sort of assuming of gender, assuming that will and other people and audience members are male, as you have assumed so is probably independently violent, should be rejected a priori in the debate space, right? Now 2 is going to be the sort of terror management. We do not we realize we cannot control terror, which means the app resolves in the first place. Also, all their citing about France probably indicate the notion of Christianity in the first place that recreates violence. All of our app is reasons why objective structures of the church and of religion are bad.
I didn't get any of that last stuff. The timer went off.
Okay. I think it's implied with the app, so it doesn't make a difference. $140 remaining, Nick.
Awesome. I'm just gonna take it because why not? I like that fun. We'll give everyone a little breather, a little relaxing.
All right, that's time.
That's 140. Awesome. So we got a total of, actually, let me check that. Okay, yeah, for 6 minutes. That's what I thought. Anyhow, the order is actually just going to be thesis, and then voters side by side. We're probably going to skip a lot of the line by line, but that will like happen in the voters. Anyhow, so starting now. So Judge, ultimately, you're going to be voting for the negation for happiness for one instant. Because remember, you're evaluating this round entirely based on an eternal recurrence. We are doing this round over and over and over again. And so this part of the debate happens no matter what. The only future you get to decide is what is the instant where you sign your ballot, and then the debate repeats. And so that's the only part that's up in the flow right now, because you can't control what I'm going to do, you can't control what he can do. You can only control yourself. And I think that's something that both the NAIC and the app agree to, is that you can only control yourself and your orientation and what you believe. And the only part that you get to exercise that control is in the signing of the ballot before the eternal recurrence restarts and we continue on our merry way and our merry existence. So I like to keep that framing in mind for the rest of the round, is the only thing that matters is that it's your happiness of that one instant where you sign your ballot and you exercise what you can control. So I'd like to just kind of review like what your neg options are for voting. So is that first they would want you to vote off of a perm, but Judge, isn't a perm a normalized structure of debate? And hasn't both teams now agreed that normalized structures you can't control? There's no point in perming. There's no point in maintaining a structure of debate, because that doesn't matter. This debate's going to happen the same all and over and over and over again. So you can't vote for the perm for it's a normal structure. You can't control it, and nothing can change. So I'm going to read this counterplan for the rest of eternity, no matter what. Whether you affirm the perm, I don't see it giving you any happiness. And they're probably also going to vote that say like, oh, we engage in normative structures of religion. We engage in normative structure. We try to control terror. But Judge, I mean, first of all, you're your own person. You can control your own terror. That's what this entire awesome ontological orientation is about, is you controlling your own terror. And so Judge, when they're going to say like, oh, vote because there's a lack of a solvency or away from the impacts because you can't control these things that we're talking about, is that you actually can control it within yourself. And so think of all of the impacts from an individual standpoint, because that's all that's left to control. And then you can obviously vote against, like, say like, oh, the neg is based on normative structures of religion and that's bad. But Judge, I mean, religion is just philosophy, except that also it's a philosophy that actually makes you feel good. It doesn't cause ontological terror within yourself. And that's honestly my response right there, is we're going to like look at impacts side by side, is that they'll have you vote for a dice flip and what like, an ontological dice throw. And like, cool, you get to create your own morals. But then, in the instant where you sign your ballot and affirm that's the ontology you want to choose, you're suddenly like, well, what values do I choose? What values do I choose? What are my morals? What's my really thought of the universe? Like and it's active nihilism. It's purgatory, Judge. And that's exactly how our opponents link. So when they basically try to make this claim that like, oh, we don't link to anything, that's completely false, because what you're doing is you're affirming this ontological coin flip, and you're living in a world of ontological nothingness, active nihilism. And it does seem attractive. It seems better than passive nihilism, doesn't it? But if you vote for neg, our entire thesis from the very beginning has been to affirm heaven. And so you get to affirm heaven. And so I just like to go exactly into detail of how this happens. Is that because we control ourselves in this eternal recurrence that's going to happen again and again and again, and the only choice of agency you have yourself is to vote for the affirm and affirm one of the two ontological orientations to live your life out. What this means is that you have to choose what the instant that you sign that ballot, and then right before the eternal recurrence restarts, and we do this again and again and again, you have to decide what makes you happier in that instance where you sign your ballot. And ultimately, that's what you're going to get out of voting for negation, is that instead of affirming some normative structure of terms, instead of like trying to control anything, and actually also, just to really fast address they say that impacts of like, oh, well, we'd solve war, fear, destruction, ecology, and violence. Judge, those are all things that A, we can't control. B, there's no war here. There's no ecological violence. There's no, and like, honestly, the only fear that you can get is from living in a world of nothingness, an existential terror. And so instead, Judge, ultimately on like a side-by-side comparison, I think the choice is clear, because when you believe in heaven, ultimately, this is the extension I think is going to be the most important. When you believe in heaven, you believe in both the comfort of having a place and the love and compassion of knowing someone's with you. That's what you get when you vote for heaven, is that you have a place and there's love and compassion within it. And that's ultimate. And so ultimately, Judge, you either vote for an ontological dice throw in which you get to create your own morals, but you're alone. You're lonely. There's no happiness. There's only existential ontological dread from that responsibility you're weighing on yourselves. Or you can choose to affirm the existence of heaven and actually have a place. That is our Francis 2020 evidence, but we don't really even need evidence. I'm telling you this place right now. There's a place where you are loved and you have comfort. And I think believing that for 1 second, even just the 1 second that you get after you sign that ballot, or while you sign that ballot, is infinitely better than any world where you have to make your own morals or abide.
The tagline, 3 minutes, whenever you're ready.
That's time.
Okay. I think the option's good. Thank you.
3:30.
Yep, 3:30.
Got it. You're good to go.
Okay. The order is going to be the F, then I guess the perm, and then the severance, I guess, after, maybe, if there's time. I think we both agree that debate is an eternal recurrence. We're living the same life and again and again. It's just a matter of how we should live. They've dropped a few implications, though, that if the sort of the Bostrom evidence, the infinite multiverse, it means that there's another world where we recreate hell, we recreate heaven, and we cannot control that. It only turns all of their impacts of ontological terror when you try and embrace that. The implication of this is, one, it means that active nihilism and embracing the resolution as a dice roll is net preferable, because it's the only thing we can do, trying to create heaven in this notions of it only recreates results upon. Two, it also probably non-uniques every single impact. If it doesn't do that, at worst, it non-uniques every single impact in the debate space, which means nobody resolves any impact, and you have deadlocked the debate, which means you have affirm on presumption, because they affirm the deny, it means deny the falsehood of, and the fact that you've taken on the burden of proof. It's a pretty easy vote for the affirmative, but worst case, you have dropped the result upon just the sort of root cause of violence in the first place, and that being able to engage in the alternative to embrace the resolution as the metaphorical diacrystal, it triggers the sort of understanding. It doesn't allow us to hate ourselves if we fail via active nihilism, which sort of resolves and mitigates the question of results about the infinite impact. You drop this outweighs on magnitude, because it's a reincarnation, it's an infinite impact, it's probability and time frame, it's always happening. It probably also outweighs on sort of strength of link, because there's sort of some mitigation on your impacts of ontological terror. There is no mitigation on the resultant impact, which means it's probably try or die to resolve the infinite violence. All of our advocacy is probably reasons why their alternative is the bad. We don't need to win the permutation to win the debate, but we'll do it anyways. They're sort of they have dropped the Kaluza evidence that objective notions of good versus evil, of positive, of negative, of trying to create these sort of morality in the first place above a position of a morality recreates result upon and probably locks in the infinite violence. This means, one, they are not able to solve their alternative. Two, it also means that their alternative is skewed by trying to create a good world, a better world, a world they see in the first place. This objective morality is dropped. We don't need to win the permutation to visit. They have also created a catch-all solution that sort of destroys all value to life, recreates all their alternative, which means the permutation is net beneficial. They've dropped the double diamond. Either they're able to overcome the app, or they cannot, which means they cannot solve. They have one argument that there's sort of normative structures of debate. One is going to be a non-normative structures of debate. They have dropped it's a question of competition, i.e., can you affirm both the alt and the app? The answer is yes by the double bind, which means you do not resolve it. Two, the relink probably implicates the only unique impact of focusing on trying to misgender people. Two is going to be these sort of challenging. Not all normative structures are bad. There's still an app win or loss that you have indicted that you still agree. The permutation probably protects it. Also, we solve. You don't solve the app. That's the dice roll.
Men.
All right, hold up. I'll make my decision.
It was a clusterfuck.
Okay, I'm back.
It sounded like y'all had fun.
As you can hear,
That's
my
good.
wonderful partner is delivering their decision in the background. So really, are you both back? Yeah, you're both back. Okay, so pretty messy debate and pretty hard for me to adjudicate this debate because it was
Exactly.
not a lot of clash going on here. So yeah, this was an extremely messy debate with little interaction and very unclear weighing mechanisms. I would have preferred to see a debate that understands and acknowledges the event's rules, conventions, norms a little bit more for future reference. I think that the NEG probably makes a strategic error trying to engage the AF on its own grounds rather than challenging the AF's like just non-topical nature. Like this is an event where that's a rule. It's very easy to the arguments that say, hey, the AF should be topical in this event are much easier to win in front of me than not. Like I will entertain critical AFs, but like it's like tough hill sledding. It's like it's uphill sledding to run an untopical AF in front of me because I just know what this event's about and I read the rules. So I would have probably not engaged on the affirmatives like chosen ground neg. I would have at the very least run neg to negate. I know Cheese Right has a run neg to negate a file going on somewhere, just hit him up. Say, Cheese, give me that vote neg to negate file. I can't tell you how often I voted on that for College of Idaho debaters. So this, I guess you're getting to my decision. So that being said, I'm voting AF on the solvency deficit. I don't think that the alt resolves the AF, and I have a risk that the AF might maybe solve the alt. It's small, but I think I'm buying the neg's arguments about permutations, so I can't really look there. And in a debate where the AF isn't topical, like you don't just get to perm other methods. That's just not how this works. But the neg doesn't say that, so I don't necessarily like just hand wave it away, but I do give them a little bit more credence on this, like perms are normative parts of debate that you don't have access to. But I have enough on the impact level to prefer the AF, specifically the AF does a really good job of sort of showing how horizontal lays in the round. And I think that that's a little bit more clear to me than like the negs sort of like vote on happiness in one instance. I think the NR does, I think the NC was not very good in this round, but the NR makes it a little bit closer. And like, I think you do some pretty good synthesizing here to kind of like show me how a neg, what I'm actually doing with a neg ballot. But I don't know how that operates necessarily within the app's world or the app's framing. I don't necessarily think you have a 100% understanding of the eternal recurrence here in this round. I think you do make it work for you in a weird way, but I'm not really seeing like how the alternative resolves the issues that the app specifies. So at that point, right, it's not necessarily competitive, but I'm not buying the perm, so I'm voting on the solvency deficit. For the AF, I think you have a pretty shallow misunderstanding of how presumption operates. I would be extremely cautious of conceding the AF doesn't solve and going for this deadlock AF presumption argument. I almost have voted against you on that alone. If you don't solve, nothing solves. Like the negative reading a counter plan and that shifting presumption is like such terrible parley baloney. It is not how argumentation works. It's not how formal logic works. I would be, if the neg was a little bit more coherent on that argument, you probably could have lost on that alone. So I would be very cautious if I were you, Joshua, making that move, or at least planning to make that move. I don't think it suits you well because the app has to solve, right? Like that's always true. Even if the neg reads a counter plan, if you concede that your app doesn't solve, you lose on presumption. So yeah, I would be cautious of making that move rhetorically because it seems like that's your plan. So yeah, that's about it. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Yeah, Max, read T. Don't be scared to read T. Don't let Cheese Right tell you that it's not that's not kosher. Just read framework, man. Like, it's important. But yeah, that's just me.
It was really enjoyable to hit you. There's a lot of fun to debate.
Yeah, have a great one. Yeah, good debate.
Okay.
I enjoyed the debate. Thank you. I actually really enjoy like that case. So yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I enjoyed yours too. It was really interesting. I forgot to read the God is Dead card.
Oh, you're gonna God is dead.
I missed opportunity.
Up to 11, man. Oh, okay.
It was a missed opportunity.
Oh, all right. Yeah. See you later.
Have a good one. Bye.